I would like to take a moment to review our general operating procedures. Our meeting is divided into two sessions, the public hearing session and the deliberation session. In the public hearing session, an application or group application on the agenda is called. The applicant makes his or her presentation. Commission members ask questions, if any, and members of the public are allowed to make their comments. Only 4 people may speak for an agenda item or project and 4 against. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes, subject to questions by the commission. After 4 minutes, a speaker will hear a loud beep and indicate you have 1 minute left to speak, and at this point, please summarize your comments. After all opposition speakers have finished, an applicant will be given time to respond. If you do intend to speak, please come to the podium, speak into the microphone at the bottom of the stairs, give your name and address for our minutes. Please direct all comments to the commission only and not to the applicant or the audience, and remember to speak directly into the microphone. On routine applications, an applicant may simply raise his or her hand if there are no objections to the staff recommendations. I will then announce that the applicant is in full agreement with those recommendations. If there are any questions, the applicant will be given an opportunity to respond. After hearing all applications, our commission will then go into the deliberation session, where commissioners discuss each application with input from the staff as necessary, but with no input from the audience. Commissioners then vote on each application, and the results of the voting will be learned from the planning department. If some issues arise in deliberation that were not addressed in the hearing, we'll have the discretion to either allow additional comments pertaining to those issues and resolve them, or call for the application to be held over for discussion at a future meeting. Occasionally, 1 or more commission members may recuse themselves from discussing and voting on a given application. This does not necessarily mean the member is directly involved with the application or the applicant, but depending upon the circumstances, ethical rules may require a recusal when there is only the slightest appearance of a conflict of interest. The Planning Commission makes final decisions, subject to appeal, on subdivisions, planning approvals, and planned unit developments, or PUDs. The Planning Commission makes recommendations to the City Council for zoning applications, and the City Council makes the final decision. At this time, please turn off all your cell phones or turn them to silent. Commissioners and staff, please remember to turn on your microphones when speaking. I'll call the roll and we'll get started. Myself, Jay Stubbs, present. Mr. Alan Cameron, Ms. Jennifer Denson, Mr. Carlos Gant, Ms. Shirley Sessions.
Here.
Mr. Taylor Atchison, Mr. Matt Anderson, Mr. Nick Amberger.
Here.
Mr. Scott Jones.
Here.
Ms. Susan Carley, Mr. Kirk Matei. We have a quorum, and I'll move for or ask for a motion to approve the agenda as presented before us.
So moved. Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor for the agenda?
Aye.
First, we will move into holdovers. Agenda item 1, east side of North University Boulevard at the east terminus of Lebaron Drive South. Staff has recommended the application for approval with 2 reasons listed and 2 conditions. Any further comments from staff on this holdover?
If you recall, the commission had suggested to the applicant that they provide a 200-foot setback across the front and across the west property line, as well as 50 feet north and south. The applicant has revised the plan. They're showing parking. They're missing 1 parking space, but obviously there is more than enough space to add an additional space and or transition any of the needed spaces for handicap accessibility. The buffers as shown, just the eastern and the western buffer entail over 1/3 of the property. The commission earlier this year recommended for B2 zoning this site up here with no additional buffers, and staff feels with the modification of this request to B2, same as what was recommended up here, the additional buffers are are not necessarily justified. So based on the revised plan showing compliant parking and the revised request to B2, which will allow the event center, we've recommended for approval with the standard buffer as required by the zoning ordinance.
Is the applicant present and in agreement with the conditions? All right. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of agenda item 1? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item.
I did have one question. So are we going to B2 or B3?
I'm sorry, B2.
Yeah, and the agenda
It-
still says.
Yes.
That was the reason for the discussion about the.
Yes, that's correct.
We understand, are we correct to understand they're okay with the B2?
Yes, just to make clear, the applicant is in agreement with the B2.
Any further comments or questions from commissioners? All right, thank you. We'll move on to new subdivision applications. Agenda item 2, 5504, 5508 Greenleaf Road. It's been recommended for tentative approval, subject to 8 conditions. Is the applicant present? You in agreement with the conditions and the recommendation? Is there anyone else here to speak for application agenda item number 2? Anyone here to speak against? All right, moving on, we'll go to number 3. 2601 Dolphin Island Parkway. Parkway Center subdivision. It's been recommended for tentative approval, again with 8 conditions. Is the applicant present? Are you in agreement with all the conditions and the staff recommendation? Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak for agenda item 3? Anyone here to speak against? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 4. 4583 Cypress Business Park Drive. It's been recommended for tentative approval with 12 listed conditions. Is the applicant present? You're in agreement with all the conditions. Is there anyone else here to speak for agenda item 4? Is there anyone here to speak against? Seeing none, we'll move on. Agenda item 5, 5791 Sweatatown Road? Swedetown. Lifelong Mobile resident. Don't know that one. Swedetown Road. It's been recommended for tentative approval with 7 conditions listed. Is the applicant present? You're in agreement with the recommendation and the conditions? Is there anyone else here to speak for Swedetown Road? Anyone here to speak against? Seeing none, we'll move on. Agenda 6, 5660 US Highway 90 West, Sea Island 90 subdivision. It's been recommended for tentative approval. There were 8 conditions listed. Is the applicant present? You're in agreement? Anyone else here to speak for US Highway 90 West? Anyone here to speak against? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next agenda section, new sidewalk waiver applications. Number 7, 1066 Hillcrest Road. Staff has recommended approval of the application for waiver of a sidewalk along Johnston Lane with 1 condition. Is the applicant present? In agreement? Anyone else here to speak for this sidewalk waiver application? Anyone here to speak against? Seeing none, we'll move on to the final section, which is group applications. 6895 Mack Drive. we have a subdivision of Mac Business Park and a PUD. It's been recommended for tentative approval on the subdivision with 7 conditions. And then 2 findings of fact for approval with 6 listed conditions. Is the applicant present? In agreement with both subdivision and PUD? Is anyone else here to speak for agenda item 8? Anyone here to speak against? Seeing none, we'll now close the agenda for the public hearing session and we'll move into deliberation. Back to agenda item 1 under holdovers. East side of North University Boulevard at the east terminus of Lebaron Drive South, recommended for approval. Applicant is present. After some discussion, seems as though everything is in order. Call for a motion.
Move to approve, subject to staff recommendations, modifying the setbacks to front, rear, and sides to standard setbacks and the B2 zoning.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. Number 2, 5504, 5508 Greenleaf Road, recommended for tentative approval with 8 conditions. The applicant is present and in agreement. Call for a motion.
Move to.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The application passes. Number 3, 2601 Dolphin Island Parkway, recommended for tentative approval with 8 conditions. The applicant is present and in agreement. Call for a motion.
Move to approve based on staff recommendations.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Number 4, 4583 Cypress Business Park Drive, recommended for tentative approval with 12 conditions. The applicant is present and in agreement. Call for a motion.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Number 5, 5791 Swedetown Road, recommended for tentative approval with 7 conditions. The applicant is present and in agreement. Call for a motion.
Move to approve based on staff recommendations.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Number 6, 5660 US Highway 90 West, recommended for tentative approval with 8 conditions. The applicant is present and in agreement. Call for a motion.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. New sidewalk waiver application, 1066 Hillcrest Road, agenda item 7. Staff has recommended approval of this application for waiver. The applicant is present and in agreement. Call for a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
One question real quick.
In discussion.
Yeah. What's the current state of Johnston Lane? I'm trying to, I know where this is, but
If you're driving down Hillcrest Road, it literally looks like a driveway. A
That's what I
very
thought.
well graveled one, but a driveway.
okay.
Now, there is 50 feet of right-of-way there, but the standard of construction that's there is essentially, I'm not even sure it's a full 2-way gravel driveway.
No, and I think everything is sidewalked on Hillcrest as well. Is the plan for this to develop out the back side of that property or just stay with the car wash as it's sitting right now? You know?
There is a plan that has been approved to modify the site, but as I recall, it is not extending any further. It is not extending, let me rephrase that. It's not extending any further to the west.
All right, thank you.
Have a properly moved and second on the floor. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion for the sidewalk waiver passes. Group Applications, 6895 Mac Drive. Subdivision and PUD, we'll take these separately. Subdivision's been recommended for tentative approval with 7 conditions. The applicant is present and in agreement. Call for a motion. Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion for the subdivision passes. On the plan unit development, it's been recommended for approval with findings of fact and 6 conditions. The applicant is present and in agreement. Call for a motion. Properly moved and seconded with findings of fact A and B. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion for the PUD passes. That concludes the agenda and deliberation items. Any further business from staff? All right. See everybody in a couple of weeks. Happy Cinco de Mayo. How do you know?